Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of Sunday, July 7th, 2024. Today, we have a fascinating conversation in store for you about cryonics and efforts to spread it throughout the world, and starting in Mexico. Joining us is our distinguished panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers and advisors, including our current Vice Chairman and Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our 2020 U.S. presidential candidate and Director of Marketing, Charlie Kam, our Director of Longevity Outreach, Ben Ballweg, and our Technology Advisor and Foreign Ambassador in Spain, Dr. Jose Cordero. So welcome to our panel. And our special guest today is Diego Zarco, who is the founder and stabilization team director in Mexico of the Advanced Cryogenics Institute. You can navigate to the website of the Advanced Cryogenics Institute here at the link below. He is also the social media manager for Latin America at CryoPrize, and you can find out about CryoPrize at the link below. And he is a voting member at the Latin Grammys, so definitely a man of many talents. Welcome, Diego. We are pleased to have you here at our Virtual Enlightenment Salon. Please tell us a bit more about yourself and about your endeavors in cryonics, as well as the current state of cryonics in Mexico.
Well, I'm glad to be here. It's an honor to be sharing all of this with you. As you mentioned, right now I'm focusing on creating a stabilization and standby team in Mexico. And well, it all started, I started my career as a musician. I graduated in music production and marketing. And at the beginning, it's something strange because most people are like, they choose music as a hobby and they work on science. I was the opposite. I used to work at music, but as a hobby, I used to study neuroscience. And I was really interested in the prospect of mind uploading. I really loved the idea. And I used to learn a lot about that. But I was like, okay, this is going to take a lot of time. Maybe when I'm 60 years old or something like that, there will be chances of making advances on that field. But it's still very far away. So my plan was, I don't know if you have heard about the life of Brian May, the guitarist of Queen. He was guitarist of Queen during all of the story of the band. And when he retired, he became an astrophysic. And right now he works for an institute whose goal is to find, for example, comets that have that could impact Earth in order to be aware about dangers and trying to deflect them or do something before it's too late. So my plan was something similar. I was like, I'm going to dedicate to music until I'm 60 years old. Then I'll retire from music and I'll dedicate completely to neuroscience. And I kept on studying some online courses and stuff like that as a hobby. But then the pandemic came and, well, everything changed. And I felt really, really touched because my grandpa, he was 90 years old at the time. And when the pandemic started, he was like, oh, I have to say goodbye to you because I heard on television that all of the people my age are going to die. So this is goodbye. And I was really, really frustrated and really sad because I was like, okay, we are some decades away from having a solution, from having something for people to be able to live forever. Maybe we don't have a cure right now for this virus, but if all the people that are gonna die in these months could could have their brain scanned, their connectome for mind uploading, they could be brought back in the future. And I was like, okay, we are so close to this, and yet we are not dedicating all of our energy to do this. So during the pandemic, I said, okay, I'm gonna get completely away from music. I'm gonna take more my studies in neuroscience more seriously. I'm gonna focus completely on that, and maybe I can find a way to help in something. Not right now, not for this pandemic, but maybe for the next time there is an emergency. And well, so I spent like the first 2 years of the pandemic studying completely neuroscience. In that time, my goal was only mind uploading because I had heard about cryonics, but there is a misconception, I believe, many people, myself included in the past. Uh, I used to think, oh, but cryonics is freezing dead people. So why do you want to freeze them if they are already dead? In that time, I was not aware that, okay, they are legally declared dead, the heart has stopped, but the brain is still viable, is still working. And in many cases, it has been even people who start cryonics procedure get since you are making CPR and all of that, in some cases they have even waken up. So they're not really dead. But well, I didn't knew about that at that time. So I was focusing a lot on mind uploading. And well, as I learned more about it, it's something really interesting because mind uploading, for example, has already been done in C. elegans worms. I think it's fruit flies, the name of the worm. But they are a worm that has only 32 neurons, and it took them 25 years to do so. So the technology to do it exists in the present, but doing it on the scale of a whole human brain with billion of neurons, it's calculated, I think it will take around 1,000,000 years or something like that with the technology we have right now. This can be done faster as we advance the technology, as we have systems to do this more automatized or something like that. But right now, it's something that even if it's technically possible, it's still not viable. And I was like, okay, mind uploading, it's still not the solution right now. However, as I was taking these courses in neuroscience, I was really surprised because one of the professors in one of the last lessons, he was talking about the process of apoptosis when the neurons kill themselves when they stop receiving oxygen. And I was really surprised because he mentioned that, for example, one of the ways to avoid that is through lowering the temperature. And that, for example, during heart surgery or even victims of stroke and stuff like that, they use hypothermia in order to allow the brain to last for various hours. And I was like, oh, this is what the people of cryonics claim. But in the past, I had heard about it at the web pages of some cryonic organizations. But I used to be a little skeptic because I was like, oh, maybe they are inventing this or something like that. But after hearing someone who had nothing to do with cryonics, he was just a medical professor of neuroscience, speaking about all of the benefits from hypothermia and lowering the temperature, and how the brain is not really dead even when it stops getting oxygen. That made me realize that, okay, the people who do cryonics, they are going in the right way. And maybe if we don't have a solution to do mind uploading right now, but as long as we are able to preserve the brain in the present, no one really has to die. We could save everyone. And I am also very inspired by an article, I think it's from Ralph Merkel, about how to, it's titled how to save everyone. And it talks about how can we build an economy of scale, creating large enough dewars to lower the cost of cryonics. And if you cryopreserved maybe half of the people who die today, you could lower the cost to almost the same cost of a conventional funeral today. Because as you make bigger dewars, you have less loss of nitrogen, and everything becomes less expensive. So right now, one of the critics of cryonics is like, oh, but it's something only for the super rich and not everyone can afford it and stuff like that. But I'm like, okay, if we are able to get this into mainstream, we could make it affordable for everyone. And every person in the world could have a chance to live again in the future. And well, one of the other reasons why I consider this is really important is that, in my personal opinion, I think that our generation has a very short-term way of looking at things. They're like, oh, but there is global warming and we are all gonna die and there is no solution and maybe these problems, I won't face it because this will be the problem of my kids or my grandsons or stuff like that. But if everyone who is alive today could have the certainty of saying, okay, I'm going to come back maybe in 100, 200 years, it will be a motivation for everyone to say, okay, I'm going to take better care of the planet, of my country, of society. Maybe, for example, politicians will have a reason to avoid going into a nuclear war. Business persons will have a motivation to invest in clean energy instead of stuff that is not sustainable. It will be like, I think it will change our way of thinking in a positive way, and something that is precisely aligned with what the Transhumanist Party is all about thinking long term, trying to mitigate existential threats. This is also the reason why I'm so interested in mind uploading, because I'm like, okay, cryonics, you have to have the physical body, but if we eventually are able to get into mind uploading, even if there is a meteorite or a giant volcano eruption or whatever, we will have like a backup of everyone. And as long as a couple of people survive, they can bring us everyone back. But well, this is, I get kind of excited when I think about all of this. But well, going back to the story, I started saying, okay, cryonics is the way to go. I'm gonna try to learn more about this. But in that time, I was like, okay, but I live in Mexico. Cryonics will not work for me nor for my grandparent, because if we die in Mexico, who is gonna get us to the Cryonics Institute or to Alcor or to whichever organization we choose? In that time, I was like, okay, then we have to build a Cryonics Institute in Mexico. And I was like, okay, maybe I can go and talk with one of the organizations that already exist to propose them, hey, could we partner to bring you to Mexico or something like that? So I made a trip to the Cryonics Institute. And over there, I talked to Andy Zawalski. He's the one over there. And when I told him about him, he told me, what we are lacking the most is not a physical facility for storage in Mexico or wherever, because you can send people over here. But the main issue with cryonics is the lack of standby and stabilization teams, which is like the equivalent to for people who are not familiar with cryonics, the SST teams, it's standby, stabilization, and transport teams. They are the equivalent of an ambulance that gets immediately to the place where his heart stopped. Because in cryonics, one of the most important things is that you're trying to save a person whose brain is still alive. So if the person died 2 days ago, there's a lot of damage to the brain. Maybe the technology of the future will be able to repair it, but maybe it won't. We don't know yet. But if the cryonic procedure is started in the first minutes after the heart stops, the brain is in a very good condition, and it's very likely that it will be repaired in the future. So, but the problem is that there are not many of those teams, and I'm not talking only about Mexico, I'm talking worldwide. I think Alcor has a team in Arizona, and they send it wherever it's needed. Suspended Animation is a company that does this, and to my knowledge, they have a team in Florida and one team in California. And the Cryonics Institute is in Michigan, and they are in the local area, but they don't even have a team that can travel to other states. So, for example, in the case of the Cryonics Institute, in most cases, they had relied in, if your grandparent dies, then his son is gonna pack him in ice, and he's gonna take him all the way over here. Or maybe in some cases there are volunteer teams, but there is really not much of a professional infrastructure or teams that can do this. And the problem with this is that SST work it's not really super complex work. Well, you need a professional surgeon, because you need to do perfusion to get the cryoprotectants into the person. But the main procedures of the SST is putting the person on ice, doing CPR, administering some medications, which you will need a nurse or someone who knows how to inject. But it's something that it's more on the logistical side than on the scientific part. It's not something that needs to be discovered how to do. It's something that just needs people to work on it. So after talking to Andy, he told me, why don't you create an SST team in Mexico? And you could send the people over here to the Cryonics Institute. We have all the expertise over here. We have all the legal permits, because also in Mexico, it was going to be like, okay, it's going to take years to get all of the legal permits to get this allowed over here. When the Cryonics Institute, they already have 60 years of experience. So I was like, okay, this is a better approach to this. And as I started doing this in Mexico, I started joining in Facebook to other cryonic groups and networking with other people. And I realized that even in the USA, most states had the same problem. And there were people asking, hey, do you know a funeral home in my state that is able to get me to the Cryonics Institute? Or do you know of doctors who are willing to do these procedures and stuff like that? And I was like, okay, this is something that is not just needed in Mexico. We need it everywhere. And it's the same about cryonics. It's not just SST. Cryonics, what is most amazing about this is that there have been numerous studies and experiments, and the technology for cryonics right now is really, really good. In the past, at the beginning, when there were no cryoprotectors, there were issues about ice formation and various stuff. But right now, the quality of cryopreservation is very good. But the main reason why many cases of cryonics are not so good is because of that, because the person is found days later, or the person is sent by plane and they are cooled in their area, but they are sent in dry ice by plane, but during the journey the dry ice evaporates, so they get to the city of the cryonic organization at a high temperature again, or stuff like that that are more like, they are not scientific issues, they are logistical issues. So, well, over here in Mexico, mm, we have a, well, one of my best friends from all of my life, he's a doctor. So I started talking with him about this. I showed him all of the studies that were published, and I was amazed when he said, "Hey, this has all of the reasons for working. It makes sense." So he joined me in this. Right now we have 2 doctors on the team, and we are 3 other people on the, well, the logistic part of this. We have already all of the equipment to do stabilization. We have the medications. What we are currently finishing setting up over here is the more of the, well, the permits, for example. We're checking with the customs agent, how are we gonna transport the person. Mainly, we have all the permits to transport the deceased person to the Cryonics Institute in Michigan, but we are having troubles with the dry ice, because most flight carriers, they don't allow the amount of dry ice which we plan to use. So we are still checking if we can reduce this quantity, or if we can work with another company that allows it. But well, over here in Mexico, we are almost ready to go. Although we haven't started offering this. We haven't started making any announcement about this, because we are still sorting out the last parts. But I'm also interested in how can we have good teams all over the world. So I'm trying to make to talk with SST teams that already exist in other places. I know that there are, for example, there is one very good team in Minneapolis from Chuck Bartle. There are teams in New York. There are teams in Florida. There are teams even in Canada. There are teams in California. And what I would also like is for all teams to join in one global team. Because I also used to think, okay, what happens if I sign up, for example, for the Cryonics Institute, and I end up living in Europe, and I die in Europe, who's going to take me to the Cryonics Institute? Or in Europe, there is Tomorrow Bio, and I was like, okay, what about if I sign up to Tomorrow Bio, but I die in Mexico, who's going to take me there? Or if I die in the USA, who's going to take me there? So it could be, well, in my opinion, it would be great to have like a network of SST teams and cryonic organizations, where you don't have to worry, wherever you die, there is gonna be a team who can help you. And well, maybe there are people who say, no, I want to be cryopreserved at Alcor because it's the best place, or in Tomorrow because it's in Switzerland, or in Cryonics Institute in Michigan. In my personal opinion, I would like to be cryopreserved at the closest place possible, because I don't love the idea of traveling 15 hours with the risk of the dry ice evaporating, or maybe the airline losing me as if I was a piece of luggage. And well, that is what I'm trying to do in talking with other teams from other cities.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Diego, for your overview. And indeed, I think you made an excellent point in that the ready availability of cryonic services could greatly help to popularize the practice of cryonics and on a broader cultural level overcome some of the pessimism that we have been observing from the younger generations. I have observed it as well, in that many young people don't see the same kind of hopeful future that even people in my generation were brought up to recognize the possibility of to some extent. And having an option for a potentially indefinite existence, even if something bad were to happen to oneself, is inspiring. And it does provide a lot of hope. Now, we have some quite interesting questions already in our YouTube chat. First of all, I would like to highlight a comment from our friend Rudy Hoffman, who writes that he met you, Diego, in Michigan at the Cryonics Institute Association General Meeting, and he was and remains impressed with your competence and sincerity. So thank you very much to Rudy for these good words. And Rudy, we were actually discussing you as a great ally and supporter of cryonics and the life extension movement more generally before we started this stream. And I look forward to seeing you at the Cryonics Summit in Miami. But Rudy does have a question or an observation for you, Diego, and this is in regard to getting cryonics patients across the border, particularly with regard to the US border, which, as we all know, has become extremely restrictive with regard to people trying to cross. And Rudy suggests this may be a potentially difficult and time-consuming effort. Alan Crowley follows up and says, I think this is a rhetorical question. Can you imagine the political spin around inanimate immigrants given the current very unfortunate political climate in the United States? So how do you envision overcoming those difficulties? What kinds of preparations, what kinds of authorizations do you think you might need in order for that process of getting across the border to be smooth so that it doesn't disrupt the ability of that patient to come to the cryonics facility in still decent condition?
Yeah, well, in fact, we are working with a custom agent, a funeral custom agent, whose day job is precisely getting people who die in Mexico back to the USA. I'm not sure if she works only with people who she sends back to the USA or to any country. But well, her job is to do precisely that. I believe in most cases it must be people who were born in the USA and they are expats or something like that. And when they die, she sends them back. Or I don't know if, for example, in the case of people whose sons live in the USA, I don't know if she also sends them over there. But well, the good part is that she has plenty of experience with doing that, and she does that every day. The difficult part is that she sends the people embalmed. So in the case of a cryonic patient, you can't embalm him because you will ruin all of his neurons. Luckily, I have talked with the Health Institute in Mexico, and freezing a person, well, even you don't even have to freeze, you just refrigerating a person to 2 degrees Celsius. That's enough that counts as a preservation method. So you are legally allowed to transport a person without embalming as long as he's refrigerated and no more than 72 hours has passed since the declaration of legal death. That is the legal part. Legally, you can do it. However, the problem is that airlines are not accustomed to doing that. So the airlines are the ones who are saying, okay, that may be legal, but we are not going to take the risk. We don't want to do it. We have never done it, and we are not going to change this for you. So right now we are precisely checking that. And the way to do it that we have found, but we are still finishing checking this. It's taking me almost 10 months of talking with the funeral custom agent almost every week, and we are still trying to find the solution. But the last idea that we got last Friday is that she told me that in the case of Jewish persons, because of their religion, they can't be embalmed. So in their case, they put, I don't know what's the name of some kind of covering that is like I don't know exactly what it is. I guess it's like towels with some embalming solution. But the important part is that it doesn't go inside the veins, inside the body. It just covers the skin. And aircraft count that as an embalming method. So it's allowed to transfer them like that without getting any chemical inside the body. So this Friday, she told me about this other idea, and I told her, well, okay, this is not, I don't love this idea. This is not the best course of action. But well, if we do that, we will only damage the skin, but at least the brain and all of the circulatory system will be, theoretically, it won't be harmed. So we can do this. Besides having the person with this, and also covered in dry ice so that we can transport him at minus 89 degrees. I made tests some months ago with 200 kilograms of dry ice, and that was enough for the person to keep the low temperature for around 48 hours. And I was like, okay, we have plenty of time because the flight to Michigan takes 4 hours. So even if there are delays during customs and upon arrival and the time it takes for the plane to take off and all of that, I was like, okay, we have 48 hours. It's a lot. We don't have any problem. But recently she told me that we can't ship 200 kilograms of dry ice. We can only ship 50 kilograms. So I have to make new tests to see, okay, how long can a person, well, I didn't make the test with a person. I made it with a doll made of jelly to try and simulate the composition of the person. In the future, we have to make another test, maybe with meat or something like that, meat from some animal, from the butcher or something like that, to be able to have the exact ratio. But well, right now, first we have to make a new test to see, okay, how long could a person, would 50 kilograms be enough to get all the way to the Cryonics Institute? But right now we are first waiting for the airline to confirm that they are okay with us transporting the patient with this method of not embalming him, but just covering him with this special stuff that they use for people who can't be embalmed, and to confirm that we indeed can carry the 50 kilograms of dry ice, and also what will be the cost, because we don't know how expensive that will be. And right now, that's also one of the things that's stopping us over here, that we can't start even talking about this or offering the service to anyone, because we don't know how expensive it will be to ship them and to do all of the work to get the people to Michigan. But well, hopefully this week we will have an answer about that.
So these are developments in progress, and you will have more information shortly that is relevant to your understanding of the shipping costs. Now, a question along these lines from our legislative director, Jason Geringer, is in regard to drones. Jason wonders, couldn't drones help cryonics in the same way that drones could help emergency medical services? And we have seen drones used in some emergency settings. Of course, to transport a cryonics patient, this would have to be quite a large drone indeed. But have you thought about this as perhaps an alternative to using the airlines that might involve less negotiation, let's say, as long as you have the rights to use the airspace with the drone?
Yeah, well, yeah, indeed, drones could be great. In some cases, for cryonics, air ambulances have been used. The problem is that they are really expensive. So, in the case of patients who have enough money to pay for this, definitely air ambulances or helicopters are the best way to go. I don't know if, as you say, if there exist already drones big enough to carry a person. Well, maybe in the army or stuff like that, but I don't know if there are commercial drones able to do this. Definitely, I'm sure that in a short future there will be. And not one problem, for example, in our case that we're in Mexico, we are somewhat far away from the Cryonics Institute, is that, for example, I think that most helicopters can't get all the way to Michigan without stopping for more fuel or stuff like that. Even small jets, I have even checked with, okay, charter jets that we can hire on demand to do the transport quickly. The problem is that not any small jets are not able to get that far without stopping for fuel. But yeah, it can be done and has indeed been done in many cases. I don't think a drone will be able to get all the way to Michigan without making any stop at this point. But I'm sure in a few years, with the way that technology is advancing, drones will, yeah, I'm pretty sure that it will be an easy solution to implement.
Yes, thank you very much, Diego. And now we have several questions from Dr. Jose Cordero.
Okay, first of all, congratulations, Diego. I think that you are writing history and writing future things happening in Mexico. So my sincere congratulations. As you might know, I have been involved in cryonics in Spain and in Latin America. We already have one patient from Argentina, and we have 6 patients from Spain, also one from Portugal, and we also have several pets. That is one of my questions. Have you considered having pets? I mean, cryonically suspending pets. And the other one is, have you learned about what we have done in Argentina or in Spain or Portugal?
Well, I have heard a lot about that there have been some cases in Spain. Well, I haven't heard, and mostly I have read in some newspapers that they sometimes publish. I have never heard about the patient from Argentina. And in fact, now that you mention it, I'm curious about how were you able to get him all the way to, was it the Cryonics Institute?
No, in Alcor. She's in Alcor. It was a brain case, and it was actually a very famous one because the person who did this, Maria Entraigues, she lives in Los Angeles. So she had to fly back to Buenos Aires to cryopreserve her mother, and she had to go through all kinds of problems to get her brain out of Argentina into California first, and then into Alcor in Arizona.
I had never heard about it, but I would love to talk to the person who did this, because I could learn a lot about the obstacles that she faced and how she overcame this. And especially because, wow, Argentina is like flying all the continent, so it must have been a real issue. Yeah. Well, no, about that question, I had never heard about that, but it's really encouraging to know that if they were able to do it traveling from so far away, with more reason we should be able to do it too. I hadn't heard either about the person from Portugal. And about the other question,
Well, let me also say that we have 6 patients from Spain, and they are in many different centers. They are in the USA. In fact, both in Alcor and pets. We actually have pets. That was the other question. We have the pets in Cryonics Institute. We also have patients in a small facility in Germany, in Switzerland, in Tomorrow Bio. Actually, we had the first patient this year in Tomorrow Bio. They had 4 last year, and so far only 1 more from Spain. And we also have a patient in Russia. So we have patients in many places, and we are very happy. Also for the pets, we have 9 pets that have been cryopreserved from Spain.
Yeah. Well, about pets, I'm like a little bit. Part of me loves the idea. Part of me doesn't love it so much, because I'm like, okay, well, I know that getting cryopreserved people back to life is gonna take a really long time. So, and I believe that there are many people who are like, oh, I'm gonna cryopreserve my pet so that we can bring it back in 10 years. Especially when it's people that don't want to be cryopreserved themselves. So in that case, I'm a little bit like, okay, I don't wanna lie to people. I don't want people to be thinking that, oh, you can cryopreserve your pet and you are gonna see him again in 10 years. In that case, I don't love the idea. But if there are people who know about cryonics, who know what it's all about, what it can and can't do, and they are also going to be cryopreserved, in that case, I believe that it's something ethic to offer, as long as the person also wants to be cryopreserved, because it will be lying, and it will be unethical to cryopreserve a pet for someone who is not gonna be cryopreserved, and then who is gonna bring the pet back. So, and it will be like, yeah, kind of cruel maybe. But yeah, it's something that I have also considered. In fact, it's also kind of funny, because everyone in my family, my parents and my brothers, they are all veterinarians. So I come from a family of veterinarians. I'm the only weird one who didn't went for veterinarians. In fact, all of my life, I always avoided any biological field, because when I was a little kid, my mother told me, oh yeah, when we were studying for veterinary, we had to open a dead dog on the university. And I got really scared about that. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to open a dead dog. I'm not going to be a veterinarian. And I was like, I'm going to be then a human doctor, because I don't want to open a dead dog. And then she told me, oh, but human doctors, they have a dead body, a dead human body, and on the university, and they have to open it. And I was like, oh no, then I'm not going to study anything related to medicine, precisely because I was really scared, and I didn't want to have anything to do with dead bodies. And well, it's something curious, because that's the reason, part of the reason why I, during my teen years, I decided to study music and dedicate to that. And somehow life got me back to that way, to the biological field, and to ending up working with dead bodies. But well, in this case, I think it's something different because it's not working with dead bodies really, but it's like doing this in order to save those peoples and to be able to prevent them from real death, from what's the name, information criteria death. So, well, yeah, it's something kind of funny how I ended up doing what I tried to avoid all of my life.
Okay, let me just mention that in Europe, in Germany, there was a company that was cryonically suspending animals in Germany. And there is one opening up soon in the USA, which is called CryoPets.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah.
the founder of that company will be going to the Global Cryonics Summit in Miami. But the other companies like Alcor, Cryonics Institute, they also allow you to cryonically suspend your pets if you have an agreement with them for you as well, which is basically what you mentioned, that you have the agreement with them. But I have another question because I checked your website and you already have cost information. So 2 questions about that. Did you already have anyone to sign up? Number 1. And number 2, how did you compute those costs? Because they actually seem pretty high for me in Mexico compared to what a Cryonics Institute charges in the USA.
Well, right now we are finishing the web page. We have already we right now we are not offering the service because we don't have we don't have everything ready. So we can't offer the service, and in fact, I haven't started promoting it on social media and stuff like that precisely because of that. The problem was that I was setting up the web page, and I was checking, okay, how can we link the part of what one of the obstacles that I see on the Cryonics Institute webpage and Alcor's webpage is that it's a really not difficult but a slow process, because you have to write them to tell them that you want to be a member. Then you have to sign up with them, but then you have to get a life insurance policy with some other provider, which you have to find on your own, and they can't like link you or recommend you someone, and they don't have an option on the website. And I was like, okay, it could be great if we could be something like Amazon, that you just have to do a pair of clicks and there you go, and everything is ready over there. So I was like, okay, part of what could be done is making a website that is easy to navigate, where you could do everything in one place. So I was just starting to create the web page. In fact, I didn't want to publish it yet, but I was like, okay, let's create the payment method to link it over here. The problem was that the payment processing company needed the web page information in order to approve your account for the payment processor. So I was like, okay, we are not ready to have the website yet, but we are not going to be able to have the payment processing solution until we have a web page. So I was like, okay, I'm going to create the web page so that we get the authorization, but we are currently not accepting any clients because it will take us, we are almost ready, but for the problem is what I told you about the airlines, for example, that maybe it will be solved in a week, but we have been having this issue for 10 months. So I'm almost certain that we will have it next week, but maybe it will take us 1 more month or 2 or stuff like that. So I'm still like, I want to be certain that we have everything in place before we have the first person sign up. And well, about the costs, also one of the we made I don't know what's the actuarial. Well, in Spanish we call it tabla actuarial. I don't know if the word
Actuarial
exists
tables.
Yeah, actuarial. Okay, it's the same word, actuarial. Yeah, we made that in order to calculate. Well, part of the problem in Mexico is that we don't have life insurance policies that you can have for all of your life. In Mexico, life insurance policies finish when you are 69 years old. So it will have no, well, it's something strange because, for example, my father has one which finishes until he has 90 years old. But I have been trying to find one for myself, and no life insurance company offers them anymore. So I keep on searching for one. Maybe they exist and I just haven't found one, even though I have been searching a lot. But maybe they discontinued them. I'm not really sure. So we were also thinking about, okay, how about if instead of having to have a life insurance policy, you could make prepayments directly to the company. Another reason is, for example, in my case, I'm like, okay, what if we reach longevity escape velocity before this? So I'm like, well, in my case, I'm in cryonics. I want to have like this option, but I also hope that we can live long enough not to need cryonics. So I used to be like, okay, but if I don't die, then I won't be able to cash the policy, and that will be lost. And part of what we are like interested in doing is that, okay, you are making this payment for cryonics, or if you live long enough for cryonics to stop being needed, because mind uploading is already possible, we are gonna give you mind uploading instead of cryonics. So you have these two options. But well, we made this actuarial table to calculate the costs. And in fact, right now, we made the prices a little bit higher than what maybe are gonna be needed, because we also don't want to be caught flat-footed in case of a black swan, because since we are charging in pesos, in Mexican pesos, we are scared about, for example, what has happened many times in Argentina, for example, that from one day to the other, there is a inflation of 100% or something like that. So right now I'm like, okay, what's the risk of what if the dollar gets appreciated more than the peso, or vice versa, or if inflation runs rampant, or if the cost of nitrogen goes really high, or stuff like that. In fact, this week, what I'm gonna go do, I have to go talk with the equivalent of the Mexican Stock Exchange, who besides selling stocks, they also sell swaps and future contracts and commodities contract, because I need to check, okay, if there is some kind of product that we could, something like a financial swap with Forex, and also for the commodity price of liquid nitrogen, and also for jet fuel for transport of the patient, and for inflation, so that we can have some kind of insurance in case, because we are making this system of prepayments for people to pay small amounts during 20 years. So there is a big risk that from 20 years from now, something changes in the price of stuff. And while maybe we could absorb these risks, I think it will be more responsible to have a professional financial company taking this risk, even if it's more expensive for us. But we need to be certain that we are not gonna go broke like many cryonic companies have done or many banks have done. We don't want to have a Le Mans moment.
Yes, thank you very much for those thorough answers, Diego. And Ben Balweg writes in our internal chat that you are painting a really good picture of this being more of a logistical problem than a scientific problem. And actually, given that you've mentioned this, I would like to hear your thoughts about what can be done to either assure or at least greatly increase the probability of organizational longevity in cryonics, be that for the cryonics organizations themselves or for organizations that provide services to cryonics organizations like the Standby and Stabilization Team that you're trying to form, or say Suspended Animation, which has been operating for a while, but ultimately, we want these teams to be available to people throughout the world, and we want people who sign contracts with them to be able to rely on the fact that if they are in need of those services, those teams will be there, even if that moment occurs decades into the future. We still want those teams to have sufficient resources to have weathered any sorts of turbulence that might have occurred in the meantime.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, well, that is something that I admit that I still have to learn about a lot about, because until now I have read a lot about Alcor, about Cryonics Institute. I have read a lot and learned everything about the cryonics organization that exists in the present. And I have read all of their online resources. I spent like one whole year becoming an expert in how they work. But one of the things that I still want to do is now I need to read all about the organizations that didn't make it, because I want to learn about the mistakes of the organizations that got broke, or who maybe, I don't know if for legal reasons, some of them got closed, or maybe for apathy, I don't know. But I know that there used to be many cryonics organizations in the past who didn't make it to the present day. And many people like to learn only about the success stories, but I think that it's important to learn also from those who didn't make it in order not to repeat those mistakes. But I have to admit that to this date, I have been focusing in all of the other stuff, on the logistical part and all of the other things. I have this on my to-do things list, but I have to admit that I haven't done it yet, and I really want to do it because I think it will be really instructive to learn about what has happened to those organizations.
Yes, indeed. And Diego, this is such a fascinating topic that you've essentially assured yourself a second Virtual Enlightenment Salon invitation once you have the opportunity to compile that research on the history of past cryonics organizations that did not work, because that is going to be instructive to all of our viewers, even those who don't primarily watch the salons because of their interest in cryonics. The topic of organizational longevity in general is a vital one for our civilization, because just as we need to figure out ways to keep individuals alive much longer than they currently live, and hopefully indefinitely, we need to figure out the same for organizations at every level, from small companies to entire governments, because governments, empires throughout history have undergone dynamics of collapse or degeneration into tyranny, for instance, and we want to know how to prevent that as well. So those kinds of lessons about what didn't work, why certain organizations failed, would be crucial. But one organization, of course, that has been quite successful in the cryonics field is the Cryonics Institute that you mentioned. And we had an excellent virtual enlightenment salon last year with Dennis Kowalski, the president of the Cryonics Institute. So I would encourage everyone to view that if you haven't already. And earlier, in February 2021, we had a salon with Maria Intrigus Abramson, whom Jose had mentioned, and she truly is a remarkable individual as well, also a musician and a singer. So there's something about cryonics and transhumanism that attracts musically talented people. Of course, we have Charlie in our panel as well, and I compose music. Jason Geringer in our YouTube chat is a musician. So Jason actually wants to hear a bit about your musical interest, Diego, and what kind of music you like to compose or play. So tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I really love rock music, mostly alternative rock music, happy punk rock. In fact, I'm not much of really virtuous music or super complicated music. I am more like um, catchy music that you can remember easily. And well, some of my favorite bands are Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance, Blink 182. And the music that I used to do was similar to that. The name of my band was Joe Vikingo, which is something like Joe the Viking. And yeah, it's like punk rock music.
Excellent, excellent. So everyone check out Joe Vikingo. And also, Simon McClenahan writes, transhuman musicians and artists are the first to be replaced by generative AI. Don't rule us out so quickly, because we have used generative AI a bit. Jason certainly has, but generative AI still requires the human touch, and it requires human intervention sometimes to correct little mistakes or misunderstandings from the AI. And I actually think because of the manner in which these generative AI systems are designed, this kind of relationship will continue for a long time. And humans ultimately do contribute the source material that the generative AIs rely on. So it won't be exclusively human creation, but it won't also be exclusively AI creation. It will be AI-human collaboration, and I think we'll see some great art arising from it. Now, I wanted to ask Charlie, since he is a music video creator and his new video on the subject of cryonics will be shown at the Cryonics Summit. What questions do you have for Diego, Charlie?
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. Hey, Diego, it's nice to meet you virtually in person here. I know we chatted a little bit or exchanged some messages online. And I do like your music. I was listening to, in fact, I asked you a question online about the title of it. Greatest Lie Ever Told, I believe, was the English translation for your.
Yeah.
What was the point? What's the lie, or what was the title for?
Well, in fact, the name of that album was like, we wanted something that meant something different to any person. So we wanted a title that was that made people get curious about what it was about, but it really doesn't have an answer. Someone might think, oh, the greatest lie ever told. And for someone, maybe it will be something about love. For someone, it might be something about politics. For someone, it might be some conspiracy theory. For some, it's something that is, the meaning is different for any person. And in fact, well, I think I didn't have anything in mind when I talked about that topic. It was just like, okay, this is something that is gonna be more of a reflection of the person who is listening to it.
Well, that's good. That's clever. It worked on me because I wasn't sure what it meant. I thought maybe it had something to do with the biggest lie being told, that people think they're gonna not die, or they don't think about death as if it's for them. It's always somebody else. But anyway, so yeah, I've been a member of cryonics for over a couple of decades now, and I think I think you put together some really good points here about the frustrating situation you have there, that you're in Mexico and you need to get to places that can cryopreserve you. And it sounds to me like in the long term, your solution probably needs to be having a cryonics facility in Mexico, regardless of whatever the hurdles are. I think you've got some extreme hurdles just trying to cross the border. And from what you told, you just explained, trying to fly with enough, ice, or getting to where you need to be in time. And it sounds like there's a lot of issues that might persist. They might change. There might be problems with getting through the border in a few months from now, if we have a new president and he wants to shut the whole thing down or something crazy. So I think the solution that you should really probably focus on is trying to get an actual cryonics facility in Mexico. And the good news is that, from what I understand, is that Tomorrow Biostasis, which operates in Europe, as Jose mentioned earlier, they're planning on coming into the United States with facilities across the United States, California, New York, Florida. And I would talk to them about seeing if they'd be willing to set something up in Mexico, given that you're a person there that has such an interest in doing it. They might partner up. There's one of the things I've always thought about with cryonics is that I knew at some point there would be a tipping point where society would start to really catch on and would want to sign up. And you can kind of tell this happens, or it's happened, in that years and years ago, cryonics, the people that were signing up were it was a little bit fringy. A lot of people were skeptical, but now you see a lot of these, billionaires and people that are founders of some of the world's most expensive or successful tech companies are members of cryonics now. And that tipping point is reached because you see places like Tomorrow Biostasis trying to really expand. Bill Falloon has been designing Timeship, which will be in Texas, which is a lot closer possibly for you. And then just in the news recently, Laura Deming, who's wants to start a cryonics company, just infused, I think, $48 million into her company Cradle, which is going to do cryonics. So I think if you partner up with one of those people that are really looking to expand, they might be very open to you having that facility in Mexico. Cryonics Institute gave you a pretty good suggestion and a willingness to do that, but I know that their financial situation and they're not necessarily looking to expand the way some of these other more aggressive companies are. So that might be something to consider. I know Kai Micah Mills, the guy who founded CryoPets, and in answer to your question about the pets, I think his goal was that if people do sign up their pets, it'll kind of motivate them to sign up for themselves. And that's what Elcor's policy is, as Jose pointed out. So I was just addressing some of the points that you talked about. And I look forward to seeing you in person down at the Global Summit in Florida. And we could talk more about all this. And maybe collaborate on some music. I've been doing a lot of songs. I've actually done a music video about cryonics called The Death of Death. And the name, of course, is an homage to Jose Cordero's book, The Death of Death. But yeah, I think it really is reached a tipping point. You're going to see it happen. I also want to say that with regard to reanimation, I think the reason that these companies are starting to flourish is because they realize that the reanimation process isn't going to be 100 years out. I think if you talk to people like Kurzweil, and I was just with him not long ago because he just launched his book, The Singularity is Nearer, like a week ago. I was with him. And he's a member. He's actually signed up with cryonics. Because of the exponential growth of computational power, pretty soon we will have a solution for reanimation. And then more than likely it'll happen within the next, at least before the singularity that he predicts will be 2045. So you're talking within the next 20 years, which I think is reasonable when you think about the fact is, we have the ability to precisely land things on Mars. That's a pretty difficult feat, but we've done it successfully. So if you think about the ability to do that, and then you put that up against, unfreezing our bodies or unfreezing our brain, I think we will have that kind of technological capability much sooner than 100 years. I think it's going to be within the 20 years between now and the singularity. So that's just what I wanted to add here. But I really commend you on what you're doing. I'm really, really excited and happy to hear that you're doing that in Mexico. And I look forward, like I said, to meeting in Florida and talking more about it and seeing any way I can help.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Charlie, for those good words. And we would encourage anybody who hasn't seen it yet to check out the Death of Death music video by Charlie Cam. Jason Geringer in our YouTube chat has also expressed an interest in making a song called The Death of Death. So, Jason, if you do that, we look forward to listening to it as well. And for those who haven't seen our virtual enlightenment salon with Kai Micah Mills of CryoPets from June 26th, 2022, please watch it on YouTube because Kai is quite a passionate advocate for cryonics and for radical life extension. He is one of the most ambitious up-and-coming members of our movement, and he has the entrepreneurial record to be able to successfully launch and sustain an organization such as CryoPets over a long period of time. So we wish him all the best in that. Now I want to ask Ben Ballweg if he has any questions or comments.
I was just looking through the questions I had, and you've kind of answered lots of them so far, Diego. I guess I wanted to ask that professor that you mentioned that it was talking about how the brain would be preserved, and you're like, oh, this cryonics thing could work. Did you happen to ask him or her about like, hey, what do you think of this cryonics thing, and if they had a response?
No, I didn't make a specific question about that because at the time I was like, well, I was not so focused on cryonics. I was most interested in mind uploading. And it was until sometime later that I was like, okay, but this that he said makes sense. But it would have been interesting to ask him about that. However, I think that everything that he said it made sense completely. The problem with cryonics is that since you go under 0 degrees, you have freezing and all of that. So you have to put in the cryoprotectants, which are toxic. So you have to find a way to take them away before getting the person back to his normal temperature. And that is the part that is lacking today. But I believe there have been experiments done with dogs, for example, not all the way to minus 0 degrees, but just to around 2 degrees or something like that. And they were in complete biostasis during 4 complete days. Their heart stopped, everything, no circulation, nothing except for cold temperature. And they were able to be brought back. So cryonics works all the way to 0 degrees. Below that, you will have to find a way to get the cryoprotectants out or repair any damage done for freezing if you didn't use cryoprotectant or whatever happened, because all of the methods today cause some kind of damage that we are going to have to solve. But at least in theory, it seems to work. So I'm pretty confident about that part working out fine. And also, I would like to go to what Charlie mentioned about having the Cryonics Institute in Mexico. I also agree with that. And not only for Mexico, but for every place. I think every country should have their own facility. And even within the same country, for example, even from Los Angeles to Arizona to get to Alcor, it's like 15 hours. New York to the Cryonics Institute, it's like 40 hours too. Texas is far away, both from the Cryonics Institute and from Alcor. So I believe that every state should also have its own facility. Well, at least for distances that are long enough to justify it. In the future, that will be ideal to have local facilities in any place. But anyway, the problem is, even if you had a facility in every city of the world, it wouldn't make much difference if you didn't have a local team that can get as fast as possible to get the patient and get him back to the facility. And even in Michigan, for example, the Cryonics Institute has a facility, but they themselves have said, we don't offer standby service. If you die in the nearby area, maybe we can go get him if we have the personnel that day, but maybe we won't be able. Maybe you will have to, your family or your friends are going to have to take you over here. So this is really critical, because if you have the facility very near, but you don't have anybody to get you, or if you die alone in your home without a monitoring device to notify someone, it's no use if the facility is 1 block away from your home, because you won't get a good cryopreservation. So my long-term goal is for well, not my goal, but I think that what we should strive for is to have a facility in every city. But long before that can be made, we need to have SST teams in every city. Right now, we can leverage on the fact that the Cryonics Institute can receive patients, and they are willing to help patients from all over the world. So I believe that we should first focus on creating local teams that can help the people. Those teams can spread the awareness about cryonics, inform people about what cryonics is, getting the word out, and using all of the experience of the Cryonics Institute, because it's also, well, we all know that cryonics is a very risky business. Many organizations have disappeared over the years. So instead of creating something new from scratch and without having experience, okay, let's work with the ones who have the experience and have succeeded during 60 years. And once there are maybe, I don't know, maybe 100 persons in one city, or some, maybe less, I don't know what the exact number would be, but okay, once one city already has plenty of members to justify it, okay, then we can start thinking about what about creating a cryonics facility in this city. But once we already have an ambulance to get the person fast, a monitoring device. I know that there are some companies that are making, some are making application for smartwatches. Last year, during a meeting in Minnesota, I met a man who was making like a, I don't know what it was, but it looked like the battery of Iron Man. It was like something that you had sticked on your chest that monitored your heart constantly via Bluetooth, I think. And well, the idea of this was to notify immediately the Cryonics Institute or Alcor in case that your heart stopped beating. So I think these are the kind of things that are really important. It's important to keep studying better cryoprotectants or better ways to preserve the person. But more important than that is exploring ways to be notified when the person dies, for example.
If I may catch where you kind of left off, Diego, you had mentioned about that the dogs were resuscitated after 4 days when being kept at 0 or 2 degrees. And I was checking myself on my science. So is the need for cold completely to keep microbial activity at a standstill, or will the human body significantly deteriorate on its own even without microbial activity? Like maybe we only have to get it cold enough that there's no microbial activity anymore, which might be well above that. What is it, negative 100, negative 196 Celsius or something for liquid nitrogen?
Well, I'm not really an expert on that field. I would be lying if I told the exact temperature or something like that. From what I have read and heard, I think that 0 degrees minus 10 degrees still has the ischemic damage still continues at that temperature. I believe this kind of damage stops around minus 150 degrees. And even in Alcor and Tomorrow Bio, they are doing what is called intermediate temperature storage. Because, well, you don't really need to get all the way to minus 190 degrees. Around, I don't remember if it's minus 150 or minus 140, but that is enough. The problem is that you don't have any substance that has that temperature. The easiest one and the most affordable one is liquid nitrogen that is at minus 190. So that's the reason why it's kept that low. But in theory, you can do it at minus 150. You even have the advantage that there is less risk of fractures because you don't go so low. The problem is that there is nothing that is at that temperature naturally. So what they do at Alcor, for example, is, to my understanding, is that they fill a dewar with liquid nitrogen, and inside it they have another dewar which is powered by electricity to heat it up a little bit. So it wastes much more electricity. It depends on electricity, so it's risky in case of a malfunctioning or stuff like that. It's more costly, but it has been done. I believe to date it has been done like kind of like an experimental phase. And I believe that Tomorrow Bio announced that they are expanding to do it like a conventional service, starting to do like that. I don't know how advantageous or disadvantageous that would be, but I know that it has been done. But I believe that a higher temperature from that, minus 100, for example, it still produces some kind of damage. Although I don't remember exactly if it's because of, if there is still bacterial growth, or if it's because of ischemic damage, or what is exactly the problem. In that area, I'm not an expert. I'm mostly someone who reads what the experts discover, and I just apply it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Diego, for your thorough answer to Ben's inquiries. And Rudy Hoffman in the chat says that he will have some helpful and on-point data to share with you at the Global Cryonics Summit. He also writes that Diego is trying hard to establish foundational structures that won't blow up given the chaos of life. And he notes that the history of cryonics is one long cautionary tale about human nature and organizations. And I think this is a tale that needs to be told more prominently so that we can recognize what mistakes have been made and how they can be avoided in the future. And as I've stated before, those would be great lessons for organizational governance and the effort to greatly improve organizational longevity more generally. Mike Lazine also writes, Diego is making excellent points. It is fine and dandy to want to be cryogenically frozen, but will your family be on board to transport you to the facility? So this is an interesting question, Diego. When you plan to perform the standby and stabilization services, how do you plan to interact with family members of the cryonics patients to make sure that they will cooperate, that they will respect the patient's wishes, that they will enable your team to operate as you need to, especially because time is of the essence?
Yeah. Well, I believe, like has always been said by the Cryonics Institute and Alcor, it's important that the person talks in advance with their family, because there have been cases in which people who have signed up for cryonics and stuff like that. Dennis from the Cryonics Institute once told me about a woman who they received a call. The woman had died 4 days ago, and her son called Cryonics Institute, and they told him, hey, I found these papers about my mother. She wanted to be cryopreserved. I didn't know anything about it. I had never heard about the organization, but it said that when she died, I had to call this number. And well, she had died 4 years ago, so nothing could be done. But what Dennis told me is that these kind of situations are really frequent. And there are many cases in which it seems that like people are afraid of speaking up. They are embarrassed. They are afraid that people are gonna be scared about this or something like that. So they don't talk to their family, don't talk to their friends, and no one knows that they are signed up for cryonics. So when the time comes, they won't be supportive, or they won't even know about this. They won't notify anyone. And I believe that part of what we have to do is speak about cryonics, speak about what we want to do and why we want to do it. In part for our family and friends to respect their wishes, but also to help spread the word and help normalize this, because humans are I believe that humans, we like to be part of something and to be part of a group. And when no one in your local groups is interested in cryonics or knows about it, or is signed up, if you are the first one, it can be really scary, and it can be like, no, I can't do this because this is something crazy. But as you talk with people about it, if people have 2 cryonic friends, 5 cryonic friends, 20 cryonic friends, they start saying, oh, so cryonic is not so crazy. If other people are doing it, then maybe I should do it too. And that way we can grow this a lot. And well, the more people who are interested in cryonics, or at least aware that this exists, the more chances we will have of someone having the training to help us in the case of an emergency, or someone knowing which phone to call in order to help us, or maybe more laws will be pushed in order to allow for quick interstate movement of cryonic patients, or everything will be easier if we speak up and we let other people know that this is something that is not science fiction, but something that is already been done in real life.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Diego. And raising public awareness of cryonics as a legitimate option for people is crucial. And to me, this seems to be common sense, because when people legally die today, what are the conventional means of addressing their remains? Burying them, burning them? Why in the world is that seen as more socially acceptable than cryonics, when cryonics has some probability that is not zero of actually preserving that individual and achieving some resuscitation in the future, whether that be a few decades from now or a few centuries from now. Burying and burning somebody does not have that potentiality. So one would think from a rational standpoint that people would be more receptive to cryonics, but it's a matter of awareness. It's a matter of having it seem more normal, more commonplace. And as Charlie pointed out, efforts are being made in that direction, and there is more acceptance now. But of course, we have a long way to go. And that will be part of what I will be addressing in my remarks at the Global Cryonics Summit as well. But Rudy has a question for you. Does Mexico have any mutual fund type companies that would enable growth of cryo funding? Are you aware of anything of that nature?
This is part of what I'm trying to solve yet, and it's part of what my plan to do this week. I have searched some. Well, I'm still exploring what would be the best way. As I told you before, in the website we have some ideas of how this could work via prepayment. I'm still not sure if this is the best way. I'm still trying to find if this is the best idea or not. Because, well, precisely the other idea is something like that, using some kind of mutual funds. For example, not recently, it was almost 1 year ago, but I was at Citi, well, the Mexican branch of Citibank, or Citigroup is it called? Well, of Citibank, and they told me they have it was like a fusion between an insurance policy and a mutual fund, in which you paid a monthly rate, and they invested it in some fund. It had like 2% annual growth, which is not so much, but at the same time, it included a life insurance. So in case you died before, you could get that policy. The purpose of that was, for example, if you were saving for your kids' college, or if you were saving for, I don't know, to buy a house or something that you wanted to buy in 20 years from now. And the other interesting thing about this was that it was indexed to the price of dollars. So you will get the amount in dollars, which in our case will be great because we would have to pay to the Cryonics Institute to receive the patient. Although what I, for example, got a little bit scared about was you also had to pay in dollars. So I was like, okay, but what if during the 95, the year 95, there was a great devaluation in Mexico, and the dollar went from costing, I think it was 2 pesos for a dollar or something like that, all the way to 8 pesos for a dollar. So I'm like, okay, what if someone is paying his insurance monthly, and suddenly he has to pay 4 times more? And the other thing is that this insurance that I found was like destined for individual people. So you had to hire it for yourself. You couldn't put a company as the beneficiary, like what is done, for example, in Arcor or Cryonics Institute for the insurance. But well, this was offered to me when I went casually to the bank as a physical person. Now I want to go to the business branch of Citigroup to ask, okay, I heard that you have this product. Could you design a specific product for cryonics, which is similar to this, but I don't know, maybe even if it's a little bit more expensive, but that would give the person the protection that even if the price of dollars went up, they would pay the same amount in pesos, but have a protection to get that amount in dollars when it's needed, and maybe we could also combine it with some inflation protection swap contract or future contract or something like that. I want to go to Citigroup. I want to go to some five more. I don't know. They are not banks. They are casas de bolsa. They are what's the name? Like stock exchanges. It's not the stock exchange. It's the company that works with that. But yeah, I know that there are some mutual fund companies in Mexico. All the ones that I have talked with them, they are more like focused on trying to sell me a product for myself, for my retirement. And I'm always like, no. I want to have something special for this company. I'm not interested in myself as a person. I'm interested in how can we make cryonics work. So far, I have not found one, but I still haven't done it's precisely what I want to do this week and the next one. I want to go personally to all the companies that do this kind of work to see if there is anyone who could do this work in I don't know if we are gonna end up using life insurance or prepayment or a mutual fund or what. I'm open to all of the options.
Yes. Thank you very much for that answer, Diego. And it looks like this is another area of ongoing research that you are performing, just as you are reaching out to the airlines. You want to figure out whether financial products are available for this purpose. I do know that the Cryonics Institute, in lieu of life insurance, accepts essentially a confirmation of a stock portfolio with a certain market value. And somebody who signs up to be a cryonics patient doesn't have to give that stock portfolio to the Cryonics Institute. It is just that this person has to instruct the stock brokerage to make that transfer of the stock portfolio conditional upon the death of the cryonics patient. So during the life of that individual still owns the stock portfolio and has the ability to reconfigure it, add to it, or even withdraw from it as long as the balance stays above the amount that would pay for a cryopreservation. But then upon the legal death of the patient, that stock portfolio gets transferred to the Cryonics Institute, and that is used to pay for the cryopreservation. So that could be a solution for people who have that kind of savings, and then they don't have to worry about getting a life insurance policy or getting another kind of financial product. But also, there has been a discussion in the chat about cost and affordability of cryonics, and this is an ongoing conversation in the YouTube chat. Mike Lazine wonders, we could save everyone. They would need money to be cryopreserved or have their brain uploaded, and he worries that people who are on a fixed income are not viable candidates. Rudy Hoffman, on the other hand, writes, so what? While early tech is never affordable by anyone, including the tech we are all using, early adopters help to fund and democratize every technology that we all love and need. And Alan Crowley echoes the concerns about affordability for fixed income people, but how can we actually make cryonics affordable? So I'm wondering, Diego, if you've thought about that, or if you've thought about affordable ways to pay for cryonic standby and stabilization, particularly for people who might not have tens of thousands of dollars in savings to make a stock portfolio conditional transfer upon death, or something similar to that.
Yeah, in part, I think it all comes down to building economies of scale. Part of the reason also why we had to, in this tentative price that we put on the webpage, the reason why we had to mark it up so high initially was because we need to pay, for example, the standby team, the medical team, the surgeon who is going to make the surgery for cryoprotection. We have to pay them a high amount, enough amount, for them to be willing to drop anything they are doing in order to go get the patient. We need them to be willing to postpone any other medical procedure they are gonna make that day in order to do this urgent procedure. So it needs to be a high cost in order to motivate them, because maybe they are just gonna have one cryonic patient per year, or maybe even less. So they are gonna be like, okay, why should I go through all of this training, through all of this, if I'm just gonna use these skills once per year? So you have to pay much more. If in change of that, we could have, we have a lot of people are interested in cryonics. There are cryonic patients every week, every day. Maybe we could have teams that, just like the people who work at ambulances, who every day work at that. They have a stable job doing that. Really, the SST work, most of it's not really super complex work, especially from the six people who have to be on the team. 5 of those, it's just the job of moving the person, carrying the ice, activating the liquid pump, activating the Lucas CPR device. It's work that can be done relatively easy. The part of the surgery, it's kind of more skilled, and the part of injection, especially you need a doctor, because you need someone to know. In many cases, it has been done by people from funeral homes, but you need someone to have the experience of dealing with a person with blood flow, and also to have the knowledge of, okay, these people died because of this, so you have to perfuse in a different way, or his circulatory system is weaker, or stuff like that. But even that could be done by a doctor who is constantly in this. And if we could have people who are always working on this, the cost will be much lower than right now, that you have to pay a really big amount in order to get that person who might be working on something else to drop everything in order to get in a hurry to where you are. And also, for example, in the case of the United States, the few teams that are specialized in that, they are in Florida, in California, and they have to fly all the way to Texas or all the way to wherever the person is, because there is no local team. If you have someone who lives 10 minutes away and he doesn't have to take a flight and book a hotel and all of that, the stabilization costs will be much lower. So I think that is part of what is really important to achieve.
Yes, indeed. And it seems that the issue of how to scale cryonics, if it is resolved, could resolve a lot of these other concerns, like the concern of cost. As you mentioned, somebody who specializes in these kinds of procedures and would hypothetically do them most or all of the time would be less expensive per procedure than somebody who only does these kinds of procedures occasionally and has to go through considerable inconvenience in order to do them. So thank you for that response. And now I would like to go to Art Ramon Garcia for his question.
I used to sort of work with an emergency pharmacy team. I had to go into after a hurricane, but to go blow in and disable, let's say, the Veterans Hospital. I would go in with the emergency pharmacy team. I would be the IT guy that take care of the equipment. And we had to dispense drugs to veterans because a lot of veterans, they didn't get the drugs, they could have a heart issue or some other issue. So I had to sort of jump on that plane and get out to, an area that was, in pretty bad condition after a hurricane, and sometimes even get there before the hurricane and had to kind of hunker down. So I've been in those situations, and yeah, I volunteered for that. That was sort of a side duty. So I didn't really get much of a compensation, but I know possibly with these teams, you can compensate them with, cryonic preservation itself. Are they cryonics? Do they believe in doing that? So that maybe that's one way to compensate them further, is to also give that kind of on the house, build that into their compensation. A question I had is where in Mexico, if you did build a facility, would you consider creating it? I mean, I thought the carrier, the AC company, had moved to Mexico, but I think maybe they didn't. But I know that these AC companies, some of them were sort of considering getting into like quantum computing. I mean, is that something you could do? Is maybe approach one of these AC companies that might want to expand, what they offer and get into cryopreservation. Any thoughts on that?
One question: what is an AC company?
Air conditioning.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, in fact, before I started with the Standby team, when I had the idea of building the whole facility over here, I started looking for some places which would be perfect. There was one building which I really loved because it was in Mexico City, the southern part of Mexico City, in what is called the hospital zone. And it's a perfect zone because most of the best hospitals in Mexico are on that same street. It also is just right next to the Periférico, which is like the kind of highway that circulates all of the Mexico City. So you can get to any part of Mexico City from there really easily. And the other advantage that part of the city has is that Mexico City is very prone to earthquakes, most of it. But that particular area of the city is built over volcanic rock. So it's the only part of the city where there are no earthquakes. There is no flooding. Mexico has the advantage that there are no tornado here. It's like from the existential risk standpoint, it's a perfect place to have it. So yeah, that will be a really good place. I don't know how easily or difficult it will be to partner with a company that specializes in something different. I had talked about a lot. I used to say, okay, maybe we could start this as a cryonics company, but more for example, the reproduction part, preserving eggs, preserving sperm, preserving even stem cells, and eventually offering a whole human cryopreservation. But well, that will be like a really long-term goal. Right now, as I said before, the most important part is having the kind of the ambulance to get for you quickly. And once there is enough interest, maybe it will be viable to do it, but in a medium future.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Diego, for your answer. And Daniel Tweed, our 2024 U.S. vice presidential candidate, writes, the way robotics are accelerating, it may only be a few years before a cryo team can be hyper-localized and automated. So I'm curious, Diego, have you given some thought to the use of robots as part of a standby and stabilization team if the robots can perform certain tasks more effectively and more cost-effectively than humans?
Yeah, in the beginning, I used to believe, okay, we could automate everything. We could create robots to do the perfusion and stuff like that. I used to think about that. Right now, I believe this is one of the jobs that it seems more likely that it will take longer for robots to get this part, because it's more like paramedic work. It's not something really the same in every case, but it's more, well, for example, if Elon Musk's Optimus robots get perfected and all of that, and they are able to carry a person just like a nurse or stuff like that, that will be very useful. But the problem is that you will need a robot that is able to carry the person and that is able to move him. And part of the SST work will not only be the physical part or the part of doing the perfusion of or all of that, but also the part of, okay, where did this person die? He died in a hospital where you have to go 5 floors up and ask the clerk person which is the room of the person, or you have to go to his house and who is gonna open her? Is her son over there and he's gonna open, or is there no one there and you have to get a permit from the police station to break in the door and get the person out? It's like I think it's a lot of human work of talking with people and solving different situations that will change in every case. The way that artificial intelligence is advancing, I don't doubt that maybe in some years it will be able to do it. But I think that it will be able to do many other jobs much sooner than this one.
Yes, thank you very much for that answer, Diego. And I'm inclined to agree. Robots can be extremely effective at particular tasks, but when you're dealing, especially with an emergency situation and all of the many contingencies that can arise, and actually getting that human patient and stabilizing that person for transport, that requires the flexibility that right now only a human mind can have, and a human body as well, and the multi-domain competencies that we possess. Now, we have a nice comment from Mike Lazine, who writes, it would be nice if the major US cities had a cryo facility so that no one who wants to be cryopreserved will be hundreds of miles away prior to being transported. And that is indeed what you are trying to achieve. So in the last 2 minutes of our salon, Diego, what concluding remarks would you have for us? Are there any other ideas that you would like to share with our audience, or just to sum up our discussion today?
Well, what I would mostly would like to finish with is that I'm doing all of this. I'm really interested in promoting and growing cryonics. But cryonics is a field that needs, it's really difficult, as we said, not only on the scientific part, but also the logistic part, the financial part, the legal part. You need a group of experts in numerous fields, and there is no one doing this. And for myself, I love to learn new things. I'm always reading, I'm always learning about different topics. But there are still a lot of things that I don't know about. As I said before, there are a lot of things that I'm not an expert on. I basically try to talk with experts and make a team of people who are really knowledgeable of the matter, and trying to join everyone together. So I don't know, maybe I said during this interview, maybe I said things that could be solved in better ways, or there are better ways to do it, or better ideas. And I would really love anyone who is interested in this, or who has better ideas, or who says, hey, you were mistaken this is better to do it this way. I would love to talk to more people, or more people to join and see how we can collaborate, because if this works, it's something that is gonna help everyone. And I'm really not an expert. I'm just someone who is really passionate with finding a way to prevent death for people. So I would love anyone who is passionate about this to help me too.
Absolutely. And thank you very much, Diego, for your insightful remarks today, your pursuit of knowledge, your diligence in your research, and your efforts to practically apply what you have learned are highly admirable traits. Indeed, they are the characteristics that we strive to cultivate here at the Virtual Enlightenment Salons. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us today so that we can all live long and prosper.